Wednesday, World's Weirdest Brains and Babies at 8:30 on Pearl.
President Xi Jinping meets Hong Kong business leaders and professionals. A class boycott by university students gets underway. And thousands pack New York streets to march against climate change. Good evening. President Xi Jinping said today Hong Kong and China are in the same boat and that their futures rely on each other. He also emphasized that the nation won't change its one country, two systems policy for Hong Kong. Diane To reports.
At the Great Hall of the People, President Xi Jinping told the high-profile visitors it will be the 65th anniversary of the People's Republic of China in a few days' time. He said over the past 65 years, China has made great achievements under the leadership of the Communist Party. He said Hong Kong and the motherland are in the same boat, adding that the fates of the two sides are interrelated. He emphasized that the country's one country, two systems policy towards Hong Kong will remain unchanged, saying it's in the interest of the nation and the SAR. He added the central government will stand firm on this policy, the Basic Law, as well as on supporting Hong Kong's democratic development and protecting its stability and prosperity. The delegation of some 70 members include Cheung Kong Holdings' Li Ka-shing and Henderson Land's Li Shaoqi, who were all also invited to dinner with Zhang Dejiang, the official in charge of Hong Kong and Macau affairs. It's the third such visit by Hong Kong business leaders since the handover. Earlier this morning, New World Development Chairman Henry Chiang dismissed accusations that the framework set by Beijing for Hong Kong's political reform leads to a fake democracy. He said no goals can be achieved in just one step, adding that one must take the first step before the second and third can come. In Singtown News Corporation Chairman Charles Ho, who also sits on the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference Standing Committee, said state leaders have been expecting protest action from students because they're young and impulsive. He added that students should think deeper into the political issue to see that electing a chief executive involves the consideration of national security. Diane To, TVB News.
University and college students began a week-long class boycott today in protest against Beijing's blueprint for political reform in Hong Kong. Organizers said thousands gathered at Chinese university rallying against the restrictions they feel Beijing has set for the SAR's democratic development. Evelina Leung tells us more.
A show of force by students on campus at Chinese University of Hong Kong today. Wearing white shirts and yellow ribbons, organizers said around 13,000 students from different tertiary institutions gathered to kickstart a week-long class boycott. The boycott is to protest against the National People's Congress Standing Committee's political reform framework for Hong Kong, as well as to demand LegCo's functional constituencies be abolished. The students also want government officials in charge of political reform to step down, saying they have failed Hong Kong people.
In order to make a better future to our next generation or a future for fighting for democracy, we should, anything we can do, we should do it and fight for democracy.
Some members of the public also came to show their support for the students.
It's an instrument to make some things visible, as well as to ask for discussion.
The students here say they're demanding a response from the government and Beijing, and if they don't get one, they intend to step up their campaign to reach the goal of fighting for genuine universal suffrage in Hong Kong.
Student organizers were happy with today's turnout.
I would say this is a positive signal to have such a number of students participating in the assembly today. So we're expecting more students come and join, not only students but also citizens of Hong Kong.
But they also faced opposition as members of the Hong Kong Federation of Women's Centers went to campus to protest against the strike. They said as parents, many don't want to see their children neglect class in an attempt to influence political issues. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
A knife attack at cable TV tower in Chunwan left 4 people injured today, including a 19-year-old suspect. All of them are in stable condition. As Lee Ziyun reports, the suspect was unhappy with cable TV's customer service.
Police sped to cable TV tower in Chunwan after receiving a report at around 11:30 this morning that a security guard was attacked by a knife-wielding man on the ground floor. The guard suffered injuries to his ear and hand. 2 other cable TV staff members were also slightly injured when they tried to stop the attacker. Police later found the suspect at the staircase. The man pointed a knife towards his own chest during a standoff. Officers finally persuaded him to surrender. The building was cordoned off for around an hour. Police believe that the suspect was unsatisfied with cable TV's customer service.
The information gathered led us to believe that he was here to discuss about a contract with cable TV.
Officers took away 2 knives with blades between 12 and 18 inches long that were wielded by the men. Some cable news staff said it was chaotic when the incident happened, with people trying to run away while calling others to lock all doors.
This lady who works in the building said she told her colleagues to stay in the office before the suspect was arrested. The injured people, including the suspect who hurt his hand, were sent to Princess Margaret Hospital and Yanchai Hospital for treatment. Cable TV issued a press release this afternoon expressing shock over the incident. The company also listed different ways for consumers who no longer want its service to terminate their contracts. Lee Yun, TVB News.
Mass rallies were held across the world demanding urgent action on climate change. In New York, hundreds of thousands joined a march calling for strict curbs on carbon emissions. Tony Sabine reports.
Hong Kong was just one of many places around the world which marked a global day of action on climate change yesterday. In New York, United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon joined hundreds of thousands of others on the streets to call on countries everywhere to take steps to curb their emissions. It was the largest single protest ever held on climate change, with activists saying it showed the issue was now a mainstream concern.
Climate change is a defining issue of our time, and there is no time to lose. If we do not take action now, we will have to pay much more.
Other big names turned up to show their support for the cause, including New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, former US Vice President Al Gore, and actor Leonardo DiCaprio. This march hoped for a commitment to action when delegates assemble in New York for a UN-sponsored climate change summit on Tuesday.
The message here is to get the word out that climate change is real, science backs it up, and it's something that we need to do something about it very quickly.
Across the Atlantic in Europe, protesters were just as determined to communicate the message that climate change is a serious threat.
Our plea to David Cameron is to put the climate finance in, the money that's needed to help countries adapt to climate change, and also help to lead the world to commit that no more than 2 degrees will rise. That's what the scientists say is needed.
A new study out on the weekend said world carbon dioxide emissions will hit a record high this year, driven by the growth of emerging economies like China. The Global Carbon Project report concluded that more than half of proven fossil fuel reserves may have to stay in the ground if governments are serious about limiting a rise in the average global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Officials in West Africa say a 3-day lockdown in Sierra Leone to stem the worst Ebola epidemic on record was a success. As Sonia Artero reports, volunteers discovered dozens of new Ebola cases.
The streets of Sierra Leone stayed clear of people on Sunday as officials reached the 3rd and final day of a mandatory lockdown to combat the deadly Ebola virus. Volunteers conducting rigorous door-to-door Ebola screening to a population of 6 million detected an additional 56 people infected. And had they not collected the bodies of 92 people who perished from Ebola, countless others might have fallen victim.
Few deaths were already reported, which otherwise we would never have known about. if we had not instituted this particular exercise. This exercise has actually yielded some very successful results.
The news sent many locals celebrating the lockdown's success.
We are happy that the result we are now having is very positive, in that we have realized people coming up, showing themselves that they have been infected.
The harsh reality is that Ebola has infected more than 5,300 people across West Africa. Of that number, 2,630 people have died. In Guinea, a rotation of Chinese medics continue to offer support. Just as one group left, another arrived to help control and prevent the fatal disease. The Chinese government also sent $5 million worth of humanitarian aid. Just this morning, a Spanish priest who contracted Ebola while working at a hospital in Sierra Leone was flown back to Madrid for treatment. He is the second Spanish missionary to catch Ebola. But researchers at the University of Oxford announce good news. They believe it's just a matter of time before their Ebola vaccine proves worthy on human volunteers.
By late November, we'd like to have enough safety data and enough immune response data telling us how the vaccine is working for WHO and other international authorities to take the difficult decision on whether this is a vaccine we should go ahead and deploy by the end of the year in West Africa.
Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Yemeni government officials and Shiite rebels signed a peace agreement on Sunday following days of violence that left more than 140 people dead. The agreement calls for an immediate ceasefire, the formation of a technocratic government within a month, and a demand to lower fuel prices. Hours before the signing ceremony, Prime Minister Mohamed Basindwa submitted his resignation over concern with the agreement. Earlier on Sunday, the rebels called Houthis seized a number of strategically important installations in Sana'a. They included the Defense Ministry, the Central Bank, the State Television compound, and a key military base. The military police are already taking back control of buildings seized. There's been a major security breach affecting webcams in Hong Kong and around the world. More than 1,000 private webcams in Hong Kong have been broadcasting live without consent of its owners. Whether it's from someone's living room, bedroom or business, surveillance cameras are broadcasting the private lives of unsuspecting owners onto a publicly accessible website. And as of today, there are at least 1,061 of them across Hong Kong and many, many more across the world. So-called IP or Internet Protocol security cameras allow their owners to receive live footage from their homes or other locations on their smartphones or personal computers wherever they are. But this website is making the footage available to everyone on the internet. This estate agency in Sheung Shui was one of the victims. Up to today, every move inside their office was being broadcast live on the website. Although they did not agree to be interviewed for this story, they told us that they've switched the cameras off. They've also reported what happened to the police. Experts say many people using surveillance video technology have overlooked basic security requirements.
The same brand most likely will have the same default password for all its camera, or at least for a single product line of this camera. So the hacker will be easily get into your camera because all the default password and username is the same.
An IP surveillance camera dealer admitted that some of its customers, especially those using older models, were hacked and their footage broadcast online. Whether it's your phone, a personal computer or something else, in a world where it's increasingly harder to get offline and where most electronic devices come with integrated cameras, you can never be too safe. So if there is something you really need to keep from prying eyes, the best thing to do may be really to just switch it off. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data said that for now it hasn't received any related complaints, and in certain cases victims can file a claim under the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. And in sports, the English Premier League served up more early season stunners as newly promoted Leicester City came back to beat Manchester United 5-3. Meanwhile, former Chelsea